Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Robert Chappell, Executive Editor of Madison365. Not in my normal studio. My normal studio has been commandeered by our data guru, and my wife Stephanie has taken over the studio today for some meetings. So you get to see me in the downstairs office, which is adorned not with the Madison365 logo, but with adorable kid art. So thank you for that. It'll be a brief update today, as I have my my seminar at 3:30. But I do want to get you up to date on a couple of things. First of all, as expected, the deaths are continuing to be reported in high numbers. We talked about this yesterday, that there just weren't very many deaths reported over the holiday weekend, and especially Sunday and Monday. And so there's a whole bunch of catch up yesterday with 107 new deaths reported statewide. Today was 82, which is frankly fewer than I expected, that's good news, actually. I thought it would be another bad day, especially when this morning Dane County reported 21 deaths alone, which is by far the most Dane County's ever seen in a day. I don't think we've ever seen more than 10 in a day in Dane County. They did have a press conference. Dane County had a press conference on this. It was online this time, thank goodness. But I went to that, and they did confirm that all those 21 deaths, they weren't old deaths from months ago that have just now been classified as COVID. These are all deaths that took place in November and have just now gotten uploaded into their system, right? So those are all deaths that happened recently, and they're all Dane County residents. So there's some thing about Dane County, and I think also there's some other counties, Milwaukee County maybe. A lot of the people who are hospitalized in Dane County don't actually live in Dane County, but like next door in Iowa County or Columbia County, Greene County, Jefferson County lack infrastructure for critical care. So when somebody needs an ICU or needs a specialized type of respiratory treatment, they actually get moved into Madison, either to Meriter or St. Mary's or to UW Hospital. So then our hospitalization numbers, which we're trying to be very clear about this when we cover Dane County hospitalization numbers, include a bunch of people who don't live in Dane County. But the deaths are only Dane County residents. So if somebody from Iowa County gets moved to the ICU in Dane County and then unfortunately passes away, that death is attributed to Iowa County, not to Dane County. Okay, so these 21 new deaths are all recent and are all residents of Dane County. Why they got so backlogged and all reported on one day is a bit of a mystery. Doesn't really matter. What is it? Is it better or worse to have 21 in one day or 3 every day for a week? It's the same outcome. In any case, it pushes Dane County's death count over 100. And today's 82 statewide pushes the death toll for the state over 3,500. We are now at 3,502. Let me just double check that. 3,502, yes. We also have 62 people who have tested positive for COVID but died of other causes, who are not counted in that death toll. The 7-day average of deaths now it was 43 yesterday, and it is 46.3 today. So that's a kind of a significant jump. Today, excuse me, 25 counties reported at least one fatality. So a slightly less spread out than yesterday. Yesterday it was 42 counties reported at least one fatality, but when you have 21 of those fatalities all in one county, in Dane, and then 10 more in Milwaukee County, the rest are not quite as spread out, but I can tell you where they were. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. Sorry, I'm having a slight technical difficulty on the website. This ad unit is like sitting on top of my chart. Got to work on that. There's always something, but I can look at this chart in another spot. And I can tell you there were 2, when I said 82 deaths were reported, it was actually 84 were reported, but there was 1 death in Brown County and 1 in Richland County that had been previously reported that were taken out of the data. So there are actually 84 deaths, but our total death count went up by 82. Okay. Now, Dane County had 21. Milwaukee County had 10. Racine had 8. Waukesha County reported 7. Polk County reported 6. Trempealeau County reported 5. Rock County reported 3. Outagamie and Kenosha also reported 3. Shawano reported 2. Marathon County reported 2. And then Wood, Winnebago, Sheboygan, Sauk, Pierce, Marinette, Lincoln, La Crosse, Jackson, Forest, Eau Claire, Douglas, Clark, and Chippewa counties all reported 1 fatality today. Now, in terms of cases, we're in a bit of a spot here, you guys. Testing is just not happening very much. I thought that we would have lower tests reported over the holiday weekend, but I really thought statewide testing would still be happening and just not reported as much over the holiday weekend, as like county health offices, wouldn't be uploading the negative tests as much as people are taking days off and things. But it's not Wednesday following that holiday weekend, and we're still really low testing. So I think it's just that, over the holiday weekend and then going into this week, people are just not getting tested very much. And this is somewhat supported, this theory is somewhat supported by the fact that today at Alliant Energy Center here in Madison, the wait to get tested was 10 minutes. Last week that was like 4 hours. So for whatever reason, I think a lot of people got tested right before Thanksgiving to make sure they could go, which is a wildly irresponsible thing to do. Because just getting tested negative once doesn't mean you're immune. It doesn't mean like, okay, I can go to Thanksgiving now. No, because you could catch it on your way home from being tested. But anyway, I think a lot of people got tested last week leading into Thanksgiving and have now just dropped off. So as a result of that, our case numbers are down, and we don't have as broad a picture of what's happening. But here's what we do know: slightly fewer than 10,000 tests today, which has been kind of the same number the last several days. 3,777 new cases, which is very bad because that gives us a positive test rate just for today of 38%. That's been hovering in the right around upper 30s to 40 for the past several days. In fact, over the weekend on Saturday, it was over 50. We had more positive tests that day than negative. But even more concerning is the 7-day positive rate. So this is going back to the day before Thanksgiving. That positive rate over 7 days for all people is now 31. Now that peaked about 3 weeks ago at about 36.5, and then went down every day for 2 weeks and has now gone up each of the last 3 days. Don't love that at all. The positive rate for all tests, which accounts for the fact that a lot of people get tested multiple times over the course of a week, is now 13.8. That was 13 yesterday. So when you're jumping a full or almost a full percentage point on a 7-day average, that's not good. I don't like that at all. One piece of good news in the stats today: the number of active cases is actually went down again. It is now below 66,000. It's like 65,900. But more important even than the average, than the raw number of that, only 16.7% of our total cases are active right now. That was 22% for a long time, and it has gone down every day. So now we have 394, 888 total cases over the course of the whole thing, the whole pandemic. And 16.7% of those are currently active, which is a lot. I mean, 66,000 people currently contagious is a lot, but it's lower than it has been, and it's a downward trend. And we like to see downward trends, right? Okay. If you have any questions or thoughts about any of this, go ahead and put them in the comments. I'm seeing a few comments here. This is a good point, Peggy. Peggy makes a point that a friend suggested maybe people are heeding the suggestion to wait several days after the holiday before testing. I think that's probably true in many cases. That it was it was a recommendation from health authorities to say, like, if you went to Thanksgiving and now you're worried about it and you want to get tested, don't do so right away. Wait the 5 days. Now, you're also supposed to act like you have it, isolate, stay distant, assume that you got exposed, but also wait 5 days to get tested. So it is entirely possible. I mean, although today is 6 days after Thanksgiving, so we should have seen a lot of people going to get tested today. So maybe people will wait till the weekend or till next week. That's definitely a possibility. That would have to be an awful lot of people to make up for the difference. But I think that is definitely true for some folks. I do also, at the press conference today in Dane County, the public health director and the county executive both said they're very concerned that there will be a big spike coming. That we won't. It'll if we people don't start getting tested until today, tomorrow, Friday, or even into next week, we won't start catching those Thanksgiving related cases until a couple of days after that, right? So it might be Tuesday or Wednesday of next week before we start to see any impact. Now, it is entirely possible that enough people were responsible about it and didn't go to Thanksgiving and actually heeded the advice not to have Thanksgiving with big extended families. It's possible that we won't see that spike. I've got my fingers crossed, and nobody's going to be disappointed if that happens. If come next Wednesday, we're still at 3,700 cases and 31%, or even less. Maybe if we're down to 28% by next Wednesday, that'd be great. However, it's more likely that we will be back in that 8,000 case neighborhood, and we'll start to see those deaths going back up, and we'll start to see that positive test rate, get back up into the mid-30s, where public health folks are still very significantly concerned about that. But they're also talking today a lot about hospitals being full and stretched thin, which may be the case in Dane County. I'm not seeing that in the statewide statistics. The statewide hospital numbers are actually doing okay. We don't have a new update for today yet, not till 3:30. But in the last couple of days, it hasn't been bad statewide in terms of number of people hospitalized as compared to available beds. It's possible that the state overall statistically could be doing okay, while still individual hospitals or individual counties are having significant hospitalization problems. Okay. I think that's all I have for you today. I will mention just very briefly before I go that the Republican legislature did roll out some proposals, I guess. It doesn't sound like the Senate is very interested in dealing with it at all. The Assembly put together a bunch of bills that would basically spread COVID more, which it's very weird that they wait 7 months and then come back into session, or don't even come back into session. They just, had some staff draft some legislation that would force state workers to go back to the office, would basically force schools to reopen fully. It seems to me that's the way I read it anyway. And would provide some funding for the hospitality industry, would put public health orders and vaccine distribution in the hands of the Legislative Budget Committee. So, basically taking power away from the healthcare professionals and putting it in the hands of legislators who have decided that they don't even need to meet ever at all. So these are not particularly encouraging developments. We did talk about it. We were going to mention it briefly on the podcast this morning and then talk about some other stories, but we ended up kind of ranting about it for about 8 minutes. So if you listen to It's Only 10 Minutes podcast this morning, it's about 14 minutes altogether, about 8 of which is us tearing these legislative proposals apart. So And again, this is not a political thing. This is not. I'm not railing on them because they're Republicans. I am criticizing the proposals on the merits of the proposals because they're absurd. They're simply patently absurd. And the Dane County executive and the mayor of Madison spoke specifically about how Madison and Dane County have worked really, really hard to keep this thing under control, and these proposals would completely undermine that. Now, these proposals will never, ever happen. Ever, never, ever, ever will they actually take effect, that's the good news. First of all, the Senate, which is also Republican controlled, just isn't going to convene at all. They don't want to do anything. So they're even more intransigent than the Assembly is. Okay. Secondly, the governor would never sign them. So I think we remain at an impasse. My sense is that this is an opening negotiating stance kind of thing. So we'll see what happens. I'm not particularly optimistic that anything will happen on the state level. So that is all I have for you today. I have to get off and get to class, but I appreciate your attention and I appreciate your support. We have surpassed $8,000 in donations now, which means our $7,000 match kicks in. So we get basically an extra free $7,000, but also anything else you donate beyond what we have now is also matched. So Madison365.org/donate to support nonprofit independent community journalism. Okay. Thanks very much. I will see you again tomorrow afternoon.
This is 365 Media.